Guys, it's Emma. Welcome back to my channel. So today I thought I'd do a bit of a more chill video, kind of a plan, a story with me. I have my iPad right here. This is what I usually work on, and I'm just going to be laying out my ideas for a story and kind of talking you through how I go about writing a short story and trying to produce something that I'll be happy with. So without further ado, let's get right on it. So the first thing I do when I have an idea period is I write it down. So this has been really helpful. I saved up for this iPad for myself for Christmas because I knew I wanted something a bit more interactive that I could also take notes on, but also, type and write. So that's what this is. So I use an app called ColaNote. That's my favorite. It's free. It's an app made by college students for taking notes. And while I take notes for school on it as well, I also have a document. I'm not going to show you all of it, but I have a doc where whenever I have any ideas, I'll just write down a little blurb about it. And so this is where I usually source most of my, when I'm okay, I'm gonna write a short story, I look on here and I'm do I have any material that I can make into something that I've already kind of formulated or come up with a little bit or just had in my mind for a while. So that's something I'd recommend, really, if you don't want to be fully starting a new project when you get a new idea, I'd recommend just writing down a little blurb about it and being this is my idea, and maybe just a few sentences. I mean, even my notes doc of this is pretty short. It's not even 2 pages. It's just blurbs of ideas that I then decide to turn into my writing a potential short story, maybe a longer story. But so for this, I decided to try to do a short story because like I said in my last video, I'll link it above if you want to check it out. I helped found a creative writing club, and it's a writer's workshop type scene. That's what you do in it. So I am going next, and so I didn't know exactly what I was going to submit. I was maybe I should submit a part of my novel, but I feel the first chapters of my novel don't really make sense without other context, and obviously there's a bit of a page limit because you don't want to hand out 20 pages to every person in the club. So I was all right, I'll write another short story. So that was the background. So now I'm not going to show you mine because I'm still working on it, but I'm going to screen record my iPad and then I'll put it in the thing and I'll just kind of show you guys what I'm talking about. I'll sketch out some random stuff and just give you some advice. So here we are, the iPad is now screen recording, and so my first thing that I like to do is make a little bit of a plot map. So if you don't know what a plot map is, this is just the thing that works best for me because I don't like to make a super detailed thing. I'll just write little arrows going to the next event. So for example, let's just come up with something totally random. So let's say main character, oh my god, my handwriting looks so bad. Main character intro. So that's our first thing. So now we're going to do an arrow to our next thing, the next thing that is going to happen in the sequence of the story. I like this because I didn't really used to plan out the plots, but now that I do this, I kind of have a little bit of a idea. So if I'm a little bit stuck in the writing, I know where I'm going next and where this story is going to lead to. So main character intro, that's general, and then we could do we meet the best friend. And then, so now, you've got stuff. And so then you just keep going from the beginning of your story to the end, and you can just I don't know, I'm not, obviously this is an example, so I'm not going to write all of it, but how it should look in the end is you should have text. My handwriting is really bad because I'm not actually doing this. Well, I am, but you know what I mean. I'm not fully putting effort into it, I'm just sketching. So at the end of you planning this, it should look like this, so that you have your whole story planned out from beginning to end. And this isn't a solid, this isn't set in stone. A lot of times I'll go back, and especially for the one I have for my novel, which is really long, I'll change events around, or if I come up with a new idea that I like better, I'll add it in. So this is something that really helps me, especially with motivation, because then whenever I come back to it and maybe necessarily I don't know what to write or where I was going next with it, like sometimes you can forget where you're going, like in your story on the journey, this is so helpful. So that's my ultimate number one tip. You don't have to have a fancy iPad like me or anything to do this. Honestly, just a piece of paper can get it going for you. I did this for the short story that I'm working on right now, and this is basically how I planned it. I came up with an idea. I was like, hey, what about, like this happens, and then I just made a outline, and I changed the outline, like I said, it happens all the time, but yeah, that's the first thing I do almost all the time, and it will be subject to change. I know I've made that very clear, but seriously, when you first make it, you might be like, oh, I don't know if I want to, draw it all out because I don't know exactly where it's going, but you should at least try so that it can be edited, and as you're writing, you know where you're going. So that's my number one planning thing I do first. And then next, I will start going into characters. So obviously up here we were like main characters. So let's elaborate on our main character. So you make notes about the character, main character. And then I like to say like, first, it depends. Sometimes it'll be physical description, sometimes it'll be other, but I like to say right off the bat, like how tall they are. Let's say our main character is 5'10". I don't know if I did the inches marks right. I'm sorry, guys. But, okay, so let's say they're 5'10", and then let's say they are 18 years old. And so these are like just basic stuff. I try to get the basic stuff written down because then you can like expand off of that as you expand your character. So you have that, and then let's figure out like what pronouns they go by. Let's have our character go by she/they. And then I'll start thinking about stuff like physical description, like what do I want them to look like? So let's just say they have brown hair. I know, very basic, but these are just examples. Brown hair, and then you could say like hair texture, wavy, and then like eye color. I'm not actually going to make that up because this is not a real story. But yeah, so then you write their physical description, and then I'd say you get a bit more into detail about their background, what their character motivations are. I also like to write down like wants and needs, because if you've ever like studied this, I'll link a video down below that explains character wants and needs, but it's basically, in summary, like a want is what they think they want, like what they're working towards, but oftentimes the want is like misguided, and the need then is what they actually need. For example, if like our main character, let's say they want really badly to get into their dream school, and that's their want, so dream school. But then, for example, their need could be accepting that maybe another school, is right for them. So the want and the need is kind of like how you balance out their character motivations, like what they want. It's very helpful then when you add more details, like, oh, they're from here, they want this, they've had this childhood issue, So that's a bit about wants and needs. And I just like to write those down, especially because it helps motivate the character. So yeah, I try to make these profiles for all my characters, especially my main ones, and you can always add more later if you somehow realize that like, hey, I might need another person in the scene, maybe I want to flesh them out a bit more, or even maybe they're just a background character. I still like to write them down to remember that they're there. So just in recap of that character profile is you do name, basic like height, age, pronouns, and then maybe go a bit more in depth about what they look like aesthetically, and then flesh out a want and need for them. And then after you've done all that, start going more in depth about their background, where they're from, why they are the way they are, etc. So that's what I like to do. I usually do a couple of those. It doesn't usually take me too long, but sometimes I'll come back and add more details, and just like the plot map, don't be afraid to come back and add more details, because I always do that. I'll like erase stuff or add stuff to the characters. Even my main characters, sometimes I'll just have more to add and say about them. So yeah, that's basically it. And then from there, honestly, I just really start writing. I mean, this is like very much the basic background for like a short story. I can do a video if you guys would like. Let me know down below more in depth about like how I plan out long stories or my novel and how I like have come up with this fantasy, because I mentioned it was a fantasy project, this like fantasy world. I have pages of notes on stuff like that. If you want something like that, you can let me know. But for now, this is just what I do to formulate a short story. And then usually once I have all this, I'll just write the first draft using our map and also using the character templates, and then I'll revise it a bit, see how I like it, maybe get like a beta reader or just a friend of mine to like, I'll be like, hey, do you want to read this? Like I just wrote it, and so then they'll help me out and just kind of give me some criticism. And then yeah, usually my short stories aren't more than like 10 pages, but I just thought I'd share because I'm working on one right now, and if you don't exactly know where to start, I really hope this helped you. But yeah, that's it for this week. Thanks guys.